Hey there, it's Sean Osborne, and welcome to another episode of the Thinking Big podcast. Today, we're talking about a topic that could revolutionize, I can't even say it, the way that you approach your goals and dreams. Today, we are talking about the power of clarity and how it can transform chaos into unstoppable progress. Now, let me start off by asking you this. Are you creating chaos or clarity in the pursuit of your goals? Because let me tell you, most of us think that we've got it all figured out. We believe that we have this amazing plan and we're marching forward with our dreams with unwavering determination. But in our eagerness to make things happen, we often end up creating absolute chaos and sometimes a complete shit show. Now, I want you to picture this for a moment. You've got this big, hairy, audacious goal. You can see it. You can taste it, you can smell it, you can feel it. You're so excited about it that you start running full speed ahead, but as you're sprinting towards the finish line, you're knocking things over, you're creating a mess, and before you know it, you are lost in a whirlwind of confusion and frustration. Be honest, does that sound familiar? It happens to me more often than I like to admit. It does. And if you say no, you're lying about other things as well. Let me share a personal story with you. Recently, I had a massive goal that I was absolutely certain about. I thought I had it all figured out, crystal clear vision, bulletproof plan. But you know what? I drove the goal straight into chaos. I let a few people down. I dropped the ball. I crapped my pants, whatever you want to call it. And it's embarrassing to admit. It is absolutely embarrassing to admit, but I had to completely stop and reassess. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, because if it can happen to me, someone who coaches living with intention, who has goals for every aspect of my life, who's constantly measuring and growing, it can happen to anybody. But I can learn from this. We can learn from this. Quick poll. Is it better to learn from your own screw-ups or from someone else's screw-ups? I would rather learn from someone else's screw-ups than my own screw-ups. This one I learned from myself. But anyways, okay, so what can we learn from this latest screw-up from Sean? And that is, we can master the art of clarity and turn potential chaos into extraordinary progress. So let's break this down, because every goal, every dream that you have follows the same type of structure. You've got to start with the end in mind and ask yourself, what am I truly trying to achieve? What's the ultimate purpose of this goal in my life? How will accomplishing this goal lead to me becoming the better version of myself? And once you've got this vision, you craft your strategy. You map out the steps that you need to take to get there. And then, my friends, you embark on the journey. But here's where it gets tricky. As you're moving forward, new information comes to light. That's how we see things. That's how we see new things. We become aware of them as we start learning. And unexpected challenges pop up. And suddenly you start questioning your original strategy. And this is a critical moment. This is where many of us falter and we think, hey, maybe if I did this new element or I add this new thing to it, I'll speed things up. Or what if I try this completely new, different approach? And boom, before you know it, you're drowning in chaos, unsure of if it's from your original plan or some of this new crap that you've added on or this new change in direction. I have seen this happen countless times in business. You launch a product or a new program that you're convinced is going to revolutionize the market. You've identified the opportunities. You understand the customer's needs and you're ready to deliver. But then, crickets. Nobody's buying. How many of you have created something, a product, a service that you've launched and then nobody buys? Now, here is where many entrepreneurs make a critical mistake. Instead of digging deeper, optimizing their approach, and truly understanding their customers, they immediately jump to creating a new product. We just give up and try a new idea. We've all been there. But let me tell you, my friends, that's a one-way ticket to a shit show. I have been there. I've done that. And let me tell you, it rarely ends well. When you launch a new product and it doesn't sell, and your first instinct is to create another product, you're not solving a problem. You're multiplying it. You're creating to it. You're adding to the problem. But here's the thing. I understand sometimes a pivot, or more accurately, it's not really a pivot, more clarity is exactly what you need. As an example, I did a sales workshop, maybe 8 or 9 months ago, that I pivoted into my email community and list building workshop. And that's when where we're building lists to grow our sales. And let me tell you, that pivot, that saved that whole business idea and it blew up. Same end results. It was all about creating sales. It's a sales workshop, but how I did it changed. My way to get there changed. I pivoted how I was doing it, and it's now the list building. And it was just with more, all I did was take it with more clarity and say, okay, how am I actually doing that? What are we actually doing? And it saved that whole idea. I didn't create a new product. I just refined it with more clarity. This is an example of when a change in direction is not just beneficial, but necessary for the survival and growth of what you're doing. But here's the crucial point. This kind of successful pivot is an exception. It's not the rule. It doesn't happen that way all the time. And more often times than not, when I've added new elements or completely changed direction, it creates even murkier and more chaotic situations. So how do you know when to stick to your guns and when to change the course, when to do a pivot? And it all comes down to clarity. When you set a goal and start pushing towards it, and you feel the need to accelerate or to change something, you need to ask yourself, am I bringing more clarity to the situation or am I creating chaos? You have to ask yourself that. And here's a little secret. When you're on the right track, when you're making the right decisions, there is a feeling to it. Deep down, there's an energy, a sense of motivation and hope when you're making the right pivot. You understand exactly why you're making those changes, and you can see how they're going to propel you forward and for the success of your goal. And on the flip side, when you're creating chaos, things start to feel inconsistent. Your discipline slips. The continuity of your vision starts to blur. You find yourself in a world where things aren't what you expected them to be. Now, I'm not saying that every plan will work perfectly, and more than likely, they all need to be adjusted. That's not how life works. More often than not, as you push forward into uncharted territory, things don't reveal themselves to be working as planned. That's when you need to be incredibly careful about introducing new ideas, for making changes, for not only pivoting, but actually changing. You need to be absolutely certain that any changes that you make are bringing a higher level of clarity and not creating more chaos. And how do I determine this? It always comes down to how I feel. And whether you call it intuition or the sixth sense or whatever you like, it's a muscle that we can all build and we can all train. Goals, especially big ones, reveal themselves over time. Part of gathering insight and understanding how to move forward is dictated by your feelings and your intuition. And when you build a strategy, especially for something big like creating a company or pursuing a major life goal, there's always an element of the unknown. And that's part of the process. That's part of the excitement. And as you begin to create and move forward, things will reveal themselves to you. And when things aren't quite working as you envisioned, you come to a crossroads. This is where the magic happens. This is where you need to sit down, take a deep breath, get crystal clear on what the right decision is. You need to move forward with a higher probability of creating progress towards your goal rather than just going for it, hoping it works and ending up in absolute chaos. Because let me tell you, creating chaos instead of clarity in your goals will push those dreams further and further away from your realization of getting them. Now, here's the tricky part. When we're faced with this crossroads, you don't always know what the right choice is. But that's why you've got to be brutally honest with yourself. We're all guilty of setting some big goals at times. We build strategies, we're confident about them, even though we don't fully understand them. And that's part of the process. We tell ourselves we'll figure it out when we get there. And sometimes that works. Sometimes it absolutely works, but other times we find ourselves in no man's land, teetering on the edge of losing belief in ourselves, and you don't want to get there. And when you lose belief, that's when you quit. There is not a single person on this earth who still believes in their goal and just quits. It doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. The only time people quit is when they lose belief in themselves. And the sad thing is, more often than not, they just had a strategy that wasn't clear. as things got murky and started to fall apart, instead of taking the time to get clear and realign, they just started throwing things at the wall. They just started throwing crap at the wall, hoping like hell it was going to stick. And boom, everything descended into chaos. Belief evaporates and the goal is abandoned. Boom, done. That's when we quit. Now, I'm not saying you should never quit. Sometimes quitting is the right thing to do for a situation. Absolutely. Sometimes we start things and they're not the best way to go. They're not the things to do. So sometimes we do have to quit. If you've created a strategy, tried a million different things, and you're just not making any progress, don't lie to yourself. Remember this, every goal has a price. And we need to make sure that that price is worth the goal that you're going after. Sometimes we start these, and again, we have to quit. Sometimes we start these, we find out the price for that goal is not worth it. That price is just not worth the goal that we're after, so we have to quit. But here's the real secret. It's a delicate balancing act of art, science, and a little bit of magic. You've got to recognize when your strategy isn't working, and you've got to be able to make the adjustments. But those adjustments need to lead to clear understanding of where you're needing to go. Not just adding more chaos to the process, it needs to add the clarity. This is a skill that you need to develop and be incredibly sensitive to. And let me tell you, even after years of practice, I still lose my way. Let me share a recent personal example with you. I've been focused on my public speaking vision. That's one of my big goals. My big, hairy, audacious goals is public speaking. And I had this vision of speaking and impacting 1 million lives. That was my big goal. That's a big, hairy, audacious goal that I have set for myself. So I decided that I needed to take my public speaking to the next level. I completed one of the best programs in the country called Heroic Public Speaking. I hired a consultant to work with, and I was going all in. But here's where I went wrong. Instead of incrementally building my speaking craft and playing the long game of continually evolving and developing that skill, I tried to do everything at once. I'm talking about putting myself out there and getting on some big stages. I went full Les Brown. The most incredible motivational speaker on the planet? Yeah, that guy. I thought I could do it all and I could do it right now. And you know what happened? I bombed on several stages. I drove myself into an absolute chaos, changing my speeches on the fly here and there to the point where I didn't even know what I was talking about. I had to stop everything and go back to my basic structure. Now, my new plan is to implement each of those elements slowly over the next 24 months, next 36 months. This is a great example of how even someone like me, someone who prides myself on, being intentional, someone with clear goals and strategies, can still fall into the trap of creating absolute chaos. So here's what I want you to take away from all of this today. For everything that you want to achieve in life, as you're working towards it and looking for ways to potentially accelerate or change your approach, take the time to get deeply clear on what it is you want to do. Think about what you can do to realign that energy and progression towards your goal. Don't just dive in hoping that this new solution or this change that you put in is going to be the magic bullet that accelerates everything. Because you don't want to be in chaos, my friends. You want to be in absolute harmony with your goals and your vision. And remember, the most basic thing is you always have to have that crystal clear vision of what you want. You always need to be willing to create a plan to get there. And then you've got to put that into action to make it happen. And then you've got to put the work in to make it happen. It's not going to happen overnight. And the beautiful thing is, when you master this balance of clarity and adaptability, when you learn to recognize the difference between beneficial changes and chaos, you become unstoppable. You become someone who can set audacious goals and actually achieve them. You become someone who can navigate the ups and the downs of any journey with grace and determination. You become someone who can turn practical chaos into extraordinary progress. So I challenge you today, take a look at your biggest goals right now. Are you creating clarity or chaos in your pursuit of that goal? Are you making decisions that bring you closer to your vision, or are you adding unnecessary complication to it? Take some time, sit down with these questions. Get brutally honest with yourself, and if you find that you've been creating chaos, don't beat yourself up about it. We've all been there. Instead, use this as an opportunity to realign, to get clear, and to chart a new course toward your dreams. And remember, clarity is power. Clarity is absolute power. And when you have clarity, you have the ability to move mountains. You have the ability to make the changes. You have the ability to overcome any obstacle, and you have the ability to achieve anything that you set your mind to. So go out there, get clear on your goals, create a solid plan, and then take massive, unstoppable action. But always, always be willing to step back, reassess, and make sure that you're creating clarity and not chaos. And until next time, this is Sean Osborne reminding you to think big, stay clear, and never, ever give up on your dreams.